recording?
Am I recording?
Okay.
Oh, wait. Yeah, that's a grid on her thing.
Are we recording this in case we want to put it on YouTube?
It's already being recorded.
Aren't we full of ourselves?
Don't put it on YouTube.
Just be careful. We don't present jokes and then the authors of the jokes decide, oh, we haven't paid them royalties.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's not put it on YouTube. I don't
That
want
happened before, by the way.
The jokes, they're all older than 50 years. I think they're in the public domain.
Okay, very good. You're the lawyer. I take what you say.
Okay.
Did you mean to be upside down on Instagram?
What, Elaine?
Did your picture mean to be upside down on Instagram?
Me?
Yeah.
No. Am I upside down?
Yeah.
That was part of his humor.
I thought it was the funny part.
No.
Why are we? I don't really want to be recorded. We're being recorded.
You want to?
Guilt. We could deal with that.
What are you going to say that they're going to record?
Okay. Am I right side up?
Yep, you're
Yeah.
right side up, and you got.
Presently right side up.
Okay.
Where'd you go? There you are.
You're right side up.
All right. I'm supposed to have a friend from Tennessee, cousin Bob from California, and my friend from South Carolina. Maybe they're on different time zones in South Carolina.
Don't know. But Doug,
Okay.
it's 7 o'clock. It's all yours.
Okay, here we go, Rabbi. Okay, well, welcome to the Temple Israel Wednesday Adult Education event. Tonight I have a few goals. I want to share some thoughts about the medical benefits of humor. I'd like to review 4,000 years of Jewish comedy in about 5 minutes. I'd like to tell you some classic Catskill jokes, and then I'd like you to share some jokes of your own. And hopefully we'll do all this in 15 minutes. I always enjoyed the Reader's Digest column, Laughter is the Best Medicine. And there is, in fact, a lot of evidence that laughter is good for your health. Humor helps your immune system, which we're all trying to optimize during this pandemic. Laughter is a powerful antidote to stress, pain, and conflict. Humor inspires hope, connects you to others, and keeps you grounded, focused, and alert. Humor relaxes your whole body. A hearty laugh relieves physical tension. Laughter decreases your stress hormones like cortisol and epinephrine, which we all have way too much going through our bloodstream right now. Lots of folks have diabetes, and there's some evidence that laughter can help diabetes. There was an interesting study by some Japanese researchers who took a group of type 2 diabetics, and they gave them lunch, and they gave them a boring lecture. And the next day, they gave them the identical lunch, except for a comedy show. And their glucose levels were better after the comedy shows than after the boring lecture. Laughter releases endorphins, and endorphins are your body's natural feel-good chemicals that promote a sense of well-being and can help relieve pain. And they're the same endorphins that are released by exercise that Alan Friedman is going to tell us how to release next Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Laughter improves your blood pressure and improves your circulation. Laughter is good for your mental
I
health.
see your number, but I don't see you. Do you see me?
I see you. It reduces
No,
anxiety.
I'm talking. Sorry, I wasn't talking to you.
Laughter reduces anxiety, anger, and sadness. It lowers your stress and increases your energy. And most importantly, laughter unites people during difficult times like this. So my first question is, how far back does Jewish humor go? How about to the beginning of Jewish history with Abraham and Sarah? Abraham was 100 and Sarah was 90 when they had a son named Abraham, and Sarah's son, when they were elderly, was Isaac. And does anyone, I don't know if Amir's here, anyone know what Isaac means literally?
I do, but it's not fair.
Okay. Anybody other than the rabbi and Amir?
I believe it means laughing.
Beautiful.
Yes, thank
friend.
you, Freddie.
You're
Yeah,
invited
good.
back to Torah study.
I learned something from you, Jay.
Yeah, I learned a lot
The
from you.
important. So we go back for 4,000 years for humor. The importance of Jews and humor is mentioned in multiple places in the Talmud. There's an interesting passage where a rabbi and the prophet Elijah, who just visited us for Passover. So a rabbi and the prophet Elijah are walking around a busy marketplace. And the rabbi says to Elijah, of all these people in this crowded marketplace, who is going to go to heaven? And the prophet Elijah points out two folks, and he says, those folks, the merrymakers. And the rabbi asks, why them? Because the merrymakers cheer up the depressed. So it's the jesters that are going to heaven. Anyone recall the name of the town in Eastern Europe that was inhabited by fools and was the butt of jokes for many, many decades?
Helm.
Thank you, Rabbi, Helm. And it's still disputed whether Helm was a mythical place in our imagination or was a real small town in Eastern Poland. A couple of our famous authors, Shalom Aleichem and Isaac B. Singer, wrote many stories about the comical residents of Helm. The Helm jokes were usually about silly solutions to problems, but the foolish residents of Helm are convinced of their own wisdom. They don't let common sense interfere with a good idea. So a typical Helm joke, which we don't get in our current culture, involves that the residents of Helm built a town hall, but they forgot to put in windows. So the village elders decided that they would solve this lack of light by shoveling sunlight into sacks and bring those sacks into the building to get light. That's the Helm humor that I guess our people loved for a couple hundred years. So from the Torah to the Talmud to Helm, and now we come to the modern American Jewish comic. First question, who is considered the godfather of modern Jewish comedy? Freddie, anybody?
George
The Godfather?
The godfather of modern Jewish comedy.
Myron Cohen?
Before him.
Before him.
I'll give you a hint. He usually had a cigar as a prop.
George
Burns.
That's what I said.
Right before him.
Jack
A
Benny.
little older.
No
Here's
cigar.
what he said about a cigar. A cigar has a fire on one end and a fool on the other. So before
Charlie Chaplin.
Okay, Groucho Marx is considered the godfather.
Very good.
Anybody remember? Anyone old enough to remember the show that he had? It was first a radio show, then a TV show in the 40s and 50s.
You bet your life.
You bet your life. You got it, Freddie. Okay, here's a
Did I
typical.
say the secret word?
What?
Did I say the secret word?
Yes.
All right. Where's the duck?
Here's a typical Groucho Marx observation. Groucho was upset when his daughter was denied access to a swimming pool at a country club because she was Jewish. So Groucho said, but my daughter is only half Jewish. Can't she go in up to her waist?
I remember that.
Okay, somebody mentioned this fellow before. This is the next icon after Groucho in American Jewish comedy. He was born Nathan Birnbaum, and he also used a cigar as a prop, and he was still performing in Las Vegas when he was 99 years old.
George Burns.
George Burns. Beautiful. Okay, so there's a couple of George Burns typical observations. It's nice to be here. At my age, it's nice to be anywhere.
Yeah.
Happiness is having a large, loving, caring, closely knit family in another city.
Very good.
One of my favorite comedians when I was a little guy was born with the birth name Benjamin Kubelski. Anybody know his stage or staged Americanized stage name? Born Benjamin Kubelski.
Jack Benny.
Jack Benny. Freddie, did you hear this talk when I gave it at the Nordics 5 years ago? Jack
If
Benny.
you want to know worthless garbage, just ask me. I know it.
Okay. Jack Benny. Now, in reality, I don't know if people know this. In reality, he was actually a very generous man, but he played a character that was very frugal. Other than Fred, anybody remember what musical instrument Jack Benny played?
Violin.
Very good. And other than Fred, anybody remember his sidekick, the black gentleman?
Rochester.
Very good. Thank you, Alan. Okay, so the most famous Jack Benny line is Jack Benny's being held up by a robber who points a gun at Jack Benny and he says, your money or your life? And Jack Benny pauses and says, I'm thinking it over. I guess that was funny in the 50s. Okay, so another classic Jack Benny observation. My wife and I have been married 47 years, and never, not once, did we contemplate divorce. Murder, yes. Divorce, never. So the question is, why are so many of the great American Jewish comics Jewish? We're only in about 2% of the population, but we're profoundly overrepresented in every list of the top 100 American comedians. Saul Bellow, the great author, said, oppressed people tend to be witty. Almost all of the top Jewish comedians are native New Yorkers. Most of them were born poor in the tenements of Lower Manhattan, and they were often the class clowns who used humor to fight off bigger bullies. Just some of the top American comedians who happen to be Jewish: Jackie Mason, Mo Howard, and I think 5 out of the 6 folks who played the Three Stooges, Rodney Dangerfield, Sid Caesar, the great Lenny Bruce, who is back now with Mrs. Maisel, Mel Brooks, Joan Rivers, Gilbert Radner, Jerry Seinfeld, and Billy Crystal. And we're 2% of the population. The Catskills, or the Borscht Belt, is where American Jewish comedy really flourished. Typical Catskill comedy is Mr. Levy is driving up from New York City to spend a weekend at the Neverly with his family. And he's on Route 17, of course. And he gets pulled over by a New York State trooper. And the officer says, Mr. Levy, are you aware that your wife fell out of your car 5 miles back? And Mr. Levy says, oh, thank goodness. I thought I'd gone deaf. Another Catskill thing that was just funny in the 60s was, I just got back from a pleasure trip. I took my mother-in-law to the airport.
Hey!
Hey! Thank you for that one laugh out there. Thank you.
I like
More Catskill. I'm not done with the Catskills yet. I've been in love.
I think they're done with you.
I've been in love with the same woman for 40 years. If my wife ever finds out, she'll kill me.
No.
Okay, this is my favorite one because this was my marriage. All my credit cards were stolen, but I'm not reporting it. The thief is spending less than my wife.
Very good.
Okay. There was I don't know if you remember another Catskill joke. There was a nice, mature fellow who slipped on the ice in front of the temple in January. And this beautiful buxom blonde came over to comfort him from the bitter cold. And she gets him all cozy. And she asks this gentleman, are you comfortable? And the man says, sure, I make a good living.
Thank God I'm making less living. Very good. Very good.
Oh, you've heard that one, Rabbi. The rabbi.
I used it. What are you talking about?
Did I steal that one from your father? The rabbi worked the Borscht Belt with comedy and music.
Yes, he did.
So when I was a little guy, my sister and I went to
steal these jokes. It's okay.
When my sister and I were little, we went to number 6 school in Woodmere, and I don't know if she remembers, but there was a bully at the school. He was a tough Jewish guy, and he would always pick on me and taunt me by saying a really big insult: "Your mother pays retail." So Diane and I, our folks went to the Neverly in the Catskills for their honeymoon in 1946, right after our dad served in the war.
So did our
and we
parents.
went back to the Neverly.
Yep.
So
That's where they went to
decades
their
later,
honeymoon, 1950.
oh, beautiful. Okay, so decades later, we went back to the Neverly, and when we're walking in the dining room, I hear this mature couple talking, and the man says, "The food here is lousy," and then he adds, "And the portions are so small." Oy, okay. Lots of Jewish jokes are self-deprecating. We love to laugh at ourselves. Like most Jewish families, my family loves Italian food, but we're not really big drinkers. So one night, the family, Diane probably remembers this, we went to a nice restaurant in Inwood. I don't know if it's still there. Is it pronounced Gionetto?
Yeah.
And
Jordanetto. No.
yeah, thank you, Mrs. Wine and Dine.
Not there.
So the wait. So we're at this nice Italian restaurant, and the waiter asks us after she takes our orders. She says, "Would anyone like a glass of wine?" Well, we're not big drinkers, so I say I'm driving. My sister says she's allergic. Somebody else says I don't like wine, and then the waitress says, "Oh, by the way, a glass of red or white wine is complimentary with each of your dinner entrees.
And then everybody.
I'll have a Merlot. I'll have a Chardonnay." You remember that, Diane? Okay. In another category of Jewish jokes, so you got the self-deprecating jokes. In another category, we are able to outsmart the system or some authority figure, which was kind of important when you're an oppressed people for a while. So this would be a typical example of that genre. 3 men are facing a firing squad, execution. An Italian, a French gentleman, and a Jewish fellow. Each one is allowed to have one request for his last meal before being executed. The Italian thinks about it and says, I'm going to have pepperoni pizza. He has a delicious pepperoni pizza and enjoys it, and then he's executed. The French man says to the warden, my last meal, I'll have coquille Saint-Jacques. He has a delicious dinner, enjoys it, execution. The Jewish fellow says to the warden, Mr. Warden, I'd like some strawberries. And the warden says, I'm so sorry, but they are out of season. The Jewish guy says, oh, no problem, I'll wait.
I
Okay,
can't
whoever
hear
has
for
the
some
better
reason.
entertainment
Step
on,
back.
please lower it. Thank you. There were
Can you
lots of jokes about Jews and food, and for some particular reason, there's a lot of jokes about Jews and Chinese food. The year according to the Jewish calendar, anybody know? Jewish calendar.
5779.
80.
All right, we'll take it. I think it's 5780, but we'll take that's close enough.
80.
The year according to the Chinese calendar, however, is about 1,000 years less. 4718 is the Chinese calendar. So the question is, what did the Jews eat during the first 1,000 years?
Gefilte fish.
Everybody keep your phone on silent, obviously. All right. So one more Jewish Chinese food observation. Two Chinese men are walking out of Katz's Delicatessen in the Lower East Side, which my dad used to get salami sent to him during the war from Katz's Deli. So one
send a salami to your boy in the army.
Yes.
Is the line.
Yes. So one Chinese man says to the other, the problem with Jewish food is that 2 weeks later, you're hungry again.
Very good.
2
Okay,
weeks
Rabbi,
later,
this one's
an
for
hour
you.
later.
I got the rabbi joke, Rabbi Jay.
Can't wait.
Okay, this would never happen with us, but this is at another temple. A rabbi at a nearby shul became ill and had to have an emergency appendectomy. The next day, the president of the temple visits the rabbi and tells him, Rabbi, I have great news. The board wishes you a speedy recovery by a vote of 6-4. Oh my God.
How true.
Okay.
How true. You're not unique, believe me, guys. You're really not. You become a lawyer and make money. But go ahead.
Okay.
I can't even see where Dougie is.
What? Can you see me?
I don't see you. No.
Where'd you go?
He's there. He took his hat off.
Oh, you're in the bottom. Oh, it's okay.
Can
I
you see?
hear you, but I don't see
all right.
you.
Now you're on top.
Can you see me now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't see
So,
you. It's all right.
my dad and I used to love walking out Atlantic Beach by Catalina and Sunday Atlantic, and we'd walk along the shore. And as you know, my dad's passions were business and marketing. And in high school, my passions were biology, organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry. So we had somewhat different interests.
Hey.
So we'd walk along, and I'd say to my dad, Dad, why is the sky blue? I said, son, I have no idea. Dad, how in the world can fish breathe underwater? Dougie, don't know. Not my field. Dad, what causes lightning? Doug, sorry, don't know. Dad, do you mind me asking all these questions? And my dad was a kind man. He said, no, Doug, how else are you going to learn?
Very good.
That's good.
I hate to fly even during normal times. I can't imagine what it's like recently. There are just too many hassles for me. I'm just not a good flyer. And I sometimes get a little obnoxious when I do fly. So I was checking in the last time and at the gate, and you know how lovely they are at the gate to people like me. And I like to pack a lot of stuff. So I had 3 bags of luggage. And I tell the lovely lady at the counter, I'd like this bag to go to DC, this bag to go to Miami, and this bag to go to LA. And she looks at me and says, sir, Dr. Segan, we can't do that. And I said, you did last time.
Oh.
Very good.
Whoa. Okay. So I don't know. I used to do a lot of running. I did 6 marathons very, very slowly. I was not very competitive. It took me all day, except for there was one time where I ran where I was competitive. A friend and I we were in Africa, and a lion started to follow us. And I said to my friend, "Do you think that you and I can outrun this lion?"
I
And
know
he
this
said,
one.
"I don't care about that. I just have to outrun you,
When
Doug."
you, yeah.
Whoa. Okay. One more Catskill story for tonight.
It's supposed to be comedy.
The Italian says, "I'm tired and I'm
Mute your
thirsty and I must
phones.
have one." What?
I'm telling them to mute their phones.
Oh, okay. You're not telling me to mute my phone yet, are you?
No, you're funny,
Oh.
but
Okay.
we can't
All
hear.
right. So, so we got an Italian, Scotsman, Russian, and a Jew. The Italian says, "I'm tired and I'm thirsty. I must have wine." The Scotsman says, "I'm tired and I'm thirsty. I must have scotch." The Russian says, "I'm tired and I'm thirsty. I must have some vodka." The Jew says, "I'm tired and I'm thirsty. I hope it's not diabetes."
Very good.
A couple of observations. You know, I grew up here, but I lived in Michigan for about 35 years. And it's really interesting when in Michigan, when I have a medical checkup and all my tests were okay, the labs and the physical exam, I would tell my Gentile friends that I got a good checkup at the doctor's. And they would give a simple, "That's great. That's great news." Ever since I've been in New York, I tell my Jewish friends, if I have a great checkup, they say, "Well, the doctor probably forgot to check something."
That's
You ever
funny.
notice that? Okay. The other fascinating behavior between Michigan and New York is in Michigan, when I'd go to a restaurant and have dinner with my Gentile friends, we'd actually sit in the first table that the hostess suggested to us. Incredible, because here in New York, whenever my family and I would go to a restaurant, we would argue with the hostess wherever they wanted to sit us. We wanted this table's better. This one's too close to the kitchen. This one's closer to the window. It's unbelievable. All right, I want you to now
It says,
put
"A
the
table
younger
like this
children.
for a man like me, please." Go ahead.
I'd like you to put the younger children to bed now, or send them off to whatever little kids do. Watch Scooby Doo, because I got 2 R-rated jokes for the people over 16, but the little kids, go watch Scooby Doo.
Scooby-Doo.
Okay, so I worked in the emergency room for 35 years, and when I started, I was working with this mature doctor, Dr. Orr, and he would always keep a pen above his ear like this. And so one day, I something wasn't right, and I said, "Dr. Orr, are you aware that there's a rectal thermometer above your ear?" And he goes like this, and says, "Oh my goodness, some asshole has my pen." Okay, so if you don't have humor in the emergency
By the
room,
way, go ahead.
if you don't have humor in the emergency room, you're gonna have a tough time surviving. So one day I'm seeing this nice young man with some epigastric pain, upper abdominal pain, and I do the big workup, labs, X-rays, CAT scan, everything, and thank goodness everything looks good, and I don't think anything bad's going on. And I say, "Sir, I think it's some gastritis, and I want you to get on. Maalox 4 times a day." So he and his wife start laughing. I say, "What's so funny?" He says, "My wife is from Czechoslovakia, and her name is Maalox."
Good.
Okay, that's the end of my professional comedy career. Does anyone please have a joke they'd like to share in our remaining 4 or 5 minutes?
That's it? 4 or 5 minutes?
That's it, because the real joke, the officer meeting, is coming up next. So
I hope you record that one.
Well, how about Rodney Dangerfield saying that he bought a used car and found his wife's dress on the back seat?
No.
If they
I
said,
don't
"Take
know,
her
but I
like
still
a
can't
flea."
see you.
that's good, Freddie. Rabbi,
you
you got
go.
one from your dad?
Nah.
Okay.
Hey, if you get
Diane, who else do we have out there? Mr. Friedman, you got one. I know Alan Friedman's got one. Barbara,
Oh,
Charlotte's
yeah.
with us from
I've
the
got one.
DC area.
A rabbi walks into a bar. He's got a parrot on his shoulder. And the bartender says, "Oh my God, what is that? How did you get that?" And the parrot says, "Go to Brooklyn. They're all over the place."
Nice Yom Kippur, Barbara. Very good. You listen-
Excellent.
Oliver asked me to tell a joke. He said, "Why did the chicken cross the road?"
Why?
Because
Why,
he
Al?
could.
Thanks, honey.
Because he could.
Thank you, Oliver.
All
Thank you.
right,
Thank you.
Oliver.
I like it.
Okay. Little Judy from Tennessee, you got a joke? Howard from my beach club, you got a joke? Charlotte from DC, anyone else? Amir, you got an Israeli joke?
All right, I have one. Can you hear me?
Okay, who's that?
Yes,
Nancy. Nancy, you got it.
Can you hear me?
yes.
Nancy.
This person.
I hear you.
Two Japanese men meet at the bathhouse.
Oh God, I can't.
One turns to the other and he says, Hiroko-san, I need to speak to you. I need to tell you that your wife is dishonoring you. And in fact, she's dishonoring you with a man of the Jewish faith. Hiroko-san is very upset. He goes home and he confronts his wife. He says, wife, it is told to me that you dishonor me, and you dishonor me with a man of the Jewish faith. And she says, Hiroko-san, where you hear such mitragas?
Very good.
That's good.
Love it.
Very cute.
That's excellent, Nancy. That's
Excellent.
very good. Anybody else got anyone else feeling great? Charlotte, you got a DC joke?
Leonard Brenner is waving his hand down in the corner there. Doug?
Yes, go for it.
I can't even see him still. I don't know where he is.
He was waving his hand.
Okay.
He's not on my screen. He hasn't
I
been
guess
on.
it's
I
up
just
to you
know.
now, Alan.
Who are we looking for?
Dr. Brenner,
Dr. Brenner, you got a joke?
is he on mute?
Lenny, you're on
okay.
the mute. Unmute yourself. Lenny, we cannot hear you.
What's dinner on Thursday? Shake Shack.
Who is it?
We cannot hear you.
I want to know
What?
where
Not
Doug
muted.
is. I can't
Somebody
find
goes
him.
to nitrous oxide. Come on, Dan.
Okay, I think that's better. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, so you left out a Rodney Dangerfield comment where he said, I can tell my parents hated me. My bath toys were a toaster and a radio.
That's very good.
So did you hear about this ambitious Jewish mother? When it came to her offspring, a stranger once inquired about their ages. She said, well, the doctor's in 3rd grade and the lawyer will be starting kindergarten in the fall.
Very good.
By the way, did you hear about the Jewish porn movie? It's called Debbie Does Butt Kiss.
Wow, Lenny, very nice.
Well, thank you. By the way, I just want to tell you guys, this may be a joke, it may be funny, but the other day, my wife, take my wife, please. She went to shop in Glad Kosher,
Oh
the
boy.
Glad Gourmet over here in Woodmere, or as they say, Woodmere. And when you get there, there's good news and there's bad news. When you get there, they take your temperature when you get to the door to go in. That's the good news. The bad news is they're using a rectal thermometer. And the only problem with that is they only had one.
Wow.
It could be worse.
Unfortunately, I think that's where we're heading.
That's
Well,
good.
it
It's
could be.
Reform Judaism.
It could have been a thermometer than Doug's mentor used in the ER.
Lenny, we're gonna hire you.
Well, I could do a couple of things here and there. So, do you guys know the story about this poor woman who's one day walking her dog and she gets hit by a car and she gets up at the pearly gates and God looks at her and says, Shirley, you're so young, you're so beautiful. What happened? She says, I don't know, doctor. I was walking my dog. The next thing I know, I'm up here talking to you. He says, well, how is it up here? He said, it's fantastic. It's wonderful. You see all your old friends, all your old pets, your neighbors, your relatives. She said, you play cards, you have swimming, you play bingo. It's fantastic. So she's up there about 3-4 months. He says, but the only problem is, the Lord says to her, but you got to say the magic word to get in. He says, well, God, what is the magic word? He says, you have to spell it. He says, what's the word? He says, love. She said, that's easy. Love. He says, Shirley, fantastic. You're in. Go have a good time. I'll see you in a few months. So a few months go by. The Lord calls Shirley. He says, Shirley, I need you to do me a favor. You've been here for several months already. I need to take a little bit of a break. Would you mind guarding the pearly gates for me? Just, you know what to do. They show up, you ask them to spell a word, you see, that's it. She says, Rabbi, whatever you want. So Shirley's guarding the pearly gates, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, there's Leo, her husband. She says, Leo, what happened to you? He says, well, after you left, I bought a new dog, and I don't know what happened to you, but I, too, was walking the dog. I got hit by a car, and the next thing I know, here I am, but I'm up here, and I'm looking at you. Where's the pearly gates? Where's the Lord? She says, well, he asked me to take a break, but I know exactly what to do. He says, really? He says, yeah, it's very simple. You got all your friends are up here, your old relatives, your pets, your friends, your bowling buddies. He says, well, what do I got to do to get in? He says, you got to just spell one word. Shirley says to him, what's the word? He says, what's the word? He says, Czechoslovakia.
Very good.
Very good, Lenny.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to just end on that one since you guys have them. Oh, I do have one more. Okay. I'll give you one more.
Yes.
So a guy and his wife get married, and they go out for their 50th wedding anniversary. And they're toasting each other. And Herbie says to Sheila, Sheila, you've been a great wife. You've been a great mother. You've been a great provider. You were phenomenal all these years. I want to thank you and toast to you to 50 years of great living together. And I got to tell you, I'm very proud that you've been my wife. And I've been loyal to you for the last 50 years. Thank you so much. And they click glasses, and Sally says to Herbie, Herbie, I got to thank you. You were a great father. You were a great provider. You worked hard. You raised our kids. You coached their little league. You were phenomenal. Says, but I got to tell you the truth. There were just three times that I wasn't as loyal to you over the 50 years as you were to me. He says, but only 3 times? That's nothing. He says, we're married 50 years. You still love me. Would you mind telling me what they were? She says, not a problem. She says, you remember after our first child was born, he had a little bit of a complication, a little jaundice. We had to stay in the hospital a little bit longer, and the hospital bill went up. He says, yeah, I do remember that. She says, remember the bills were up there, and I had dinner one night with the obstetrician, and all of a sudden we didn't get bills anymore? He says, but that was great. You did it for our family, our friends, our finances. What could the second one possibly be? He says, well, do you remember after we decided we were going to move or not, after our third child, we needed to expand the house, and we decided we loved the neighborhood. We're going to expand the house, and the contracting bills went literally over the roof. And I had dinner one night with the contractor, and all of a sudden our bills went away. He says, but that was great. You did it for our family, our friends, our contract, our future. What could the third one possibly be? She says, you remember the time when you wanted to run for president of the men's club of the temple, and you only needed 43 more votes?
Very good, Lenny. Oh my
Very
God.
good.
Anyway, I'll save the rest for our next comment. But thank you. Thank you.
Elena has one.
I have one. Thank you, Lynn. So, a rabbi, a cantor, and a congregational president all are held by a robber who points a gun at them. Rabbi, please, let me at least give one more sermon before you shoot me. Cantor cries, let me at least sing Kol Nidre once more before you shoot me. President begs the guy, whatever, the guy, the robber, shoot me first.
Very good. The president likes that one.
Delaney will never get a recommendation from me, but that's all right.
Very good.
Very
Cantor.
funny.
Thank you.
Very nice. Cantor.
Doug, you were fantastic.
Mr. Fritz and anybody
You
else?
were fantastic. You're better than nothing, guys.
I can't top that.
Diane left.
Ow.
My sister left? Okay,
Your
anybody
sister
else?
left.
One more? Danny? My niece?
Yeah, I got one.
Okay, who's that?
This
Danny?
is Denise. Yep.
Okay, go for it, Danny.
Hi, everybody. Okay. 3 Jewish mothers are sitting on a bench arguing over whose son loves her the most. The first one says, you know, my son, he sends me flowers every Shabbos. You call that love? Says the second mother. My son calls me every day. Third woman says, that's nothing. My son is in therapy 5 days a week, and the whole time he talks about me.
Very good.
Very good. Danny's a therapist. Very good.
Wait,
So-
is that Diane's
She didn't
daughter?
finish.
Was that Diane's daughter? that was talking?
Were you done
Danielle.
with that joke?
Danielle.
Yes.
Hi,
Okay.
Danielle.
It was
it's
great.
Linda.
It was great.
Hi,
So a
Linda.
man,
I can't see you. I can't see your uncle. I don't know what happened here. I see everybody else.
so Mario is shopping with his wife, and all of a sudden they get home, and they get out of the store, and all of a sudden the store security guard comes over, and he sees the wife,
Go over there.
and he sees that she stole a can of pears, P-E-A-R-S. They said, we got to bring you to court. How are we going to see what your fine would be? So they take her to court, and the judge comes out and he says, ma'am, I see you accused of stealing a can of pears. I don't know how to sentence you for this. He says, well, let me see. How many pears in that can? She said 6. He says, all right, I'm going to sentence you to 6 days in jail. Case dismissed. The husband stands up and says, wait a minute, judge, I'm not done. She also stole a can of peas.
I got
Very nice,
one
Danny.
for you. A typical
Thank you.
mother-in-law
Thank you.
joke.
Thank you.
This is good. I
Thank
keep
you.
it on the holidays anyway. He was in Israel with his wife and his mother-in-law, and tragically, his mother-in-law passed away. This is for the Easter Passover season. So he goes to a funeral director, and the funeral director said, Mr. Schwartz, a terrible tragedy. We're very sorry. Your mother-in-law was a very devout individual. Let's bury her here in Jerusalem. And he said, it'll save you a tremendous amount of money. And Mr. Schwartz says, what's the other option? To fly back to the States, but it'll cost you another $15,000. And Mr. Schwartz thinks, and he says, let's fly you back to the States. The funeral director said, Mr. Schwartz, you're not a wealthy man. Your mother-in-law is a religious woman. Why would you spend this money to fly you back to the States rather than bury her here in Eretz Israel? To which he responded, the last person you buried here in Israel came back in 3 days. That's it.
That's not bad.
I don't tell the
Very
truth,
good.
believe me, but that's all right.
Very good, Rabbi. Ed, you got any jokes? Anybody got one more? Danny, anybody? Charlotte, little Judy?
What did the dyslexic rabbi say after a particularly rough day? Yo.
Very good one. I got to come to you. Better than laughing gas, I'm telling you.
That's true. Exactly.
Yo.
Thank you. Well, this was fun.
Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? All right. Everyone have a peaceful night. Stay
Good
safe.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow night at, help me out here, 7:30 tomorrow night for social hour with Cantor and Elaine. And we'll see you Friday night at 7 o'clock for services with Cantor and Rabbi. And
Right.
Saturday morning for Torah study. Everyone stay safe. And I'll see the officers in 5 minutes for officer meeting, which should be very funny.
Thank you.
All right, be careful out
Okay.
there.
And
Good night,
also,
everybody.
Friday night is Easter, and also Yom HaShoah. So let's all join together and celebrate the birthday of Pesach. Doug, you're fantastic.
Thank you, Rabbi. Everyone have a
Great.
good
Thank
night.
you.
Thanks.
you,
Just
Judge.
remember,
5 minutes, officers.
just remember when you go to Glad Kosher, BYOT. Bring your own
Yes.
thermometer. Good night, everybody.
Good.
Thank you.
Good job, everybody.
Good job.
Great.
Ellen
Thank
here.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Nice. I liked your joke.
Take care, darling.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Hi, Amir. Hi, Ed. Hi, Ed. Ed, I don't hear you. Do you hear me? You're on mute.
Yes. Hi.
Okay. How
Is
are
this
you?
the what are we having tonight? The board meeting? Is this the board meeting or is this the comedy show?
The comedy is over. Okay, so I'm gonna get out.
No, it's all right. I think we have a different address.
Okay.
Have a good night, Cantor.
Too. Bye. Good to
Bye.
see you.
Thank you.
Say hi to Stephanie.
Thank you. I will.
Bye.